Well, all right. Well, it is time almost to go to bed. It's 9:30, and I've had an eventful day. Not it hasn't been a great day with the rain and with truck problems and all the rest of it, but still it's yeah. Anyway, see what happens tomorrow. Rocky is asleep in his box with his fish. Hold on a minute here. Show you Rocky again. There he is. There he is. Oh, he's cute. Gonna drop the tablet if I keep trying to hold it like that, though. Anyway, that's about it. Um. Oh boy. Anyway. um. At this point, the rain has saturated the field, so that'll set my move back. Plus, looking like the truck is dying, so there is that too. I don't think I can put any more money into it. I've put way too much into it as it is. Um, right now, there really isn't anything in Canada, or at least in Ontario, that isn't going to be cost prohibitive for me to drive. Really, it's driving is too expensive now. That's the bottom line. It's just too expensive. Um, Vehicles are no good. They're overcomplicated and they're poorly made. And everything costs a lot of money. So I don't know. I don't see me driving for very much longer. I'm concerned with that truck that if I take it out, I may get stranded on the road with it or something. I don't even have the money to hire a tow truck to move it. So I have to be very careful. Anyway, I'm grateful that it died where it did and that I was able at least to get it back here. I did let it cool down for a few hours and then I just took it into town, which is a fairly short drive. It went into town fine. Coming back though, it was acting up pretty good. It doesn't really. I had to put the gas to it to keep it going. I could tell the transmission was not wanting to pull the truck, but it is what it is. Um, Not much I can do at this point, and it just is what it is. Um, it doesn't look like I'm going to have it to assist me with my move though, which really sucks. I don't see that happening at this point. It just seems like it's one thing after another, but then that's modern life, I guess, too. There are so many of us going through that. I'm not the only one. There are even people far worse off than I am right now. And that is all by design. That's the whole part of the globalist agenda. Now, I'm not claiming that I manage my affairs well because I really haven't. But the fact that once you get down, you have such a hard time getting back up, and that you have so much going against you in order not to be knocked down or to get back up once you are knocked down. That's all part of the globalist agenda. You know, they're making it very difficult. And I know other people who are going through similar situations. I have a good friend really good friend who's in the process of he's probably going to lose his business that he's worked really hard to build up because of things being the way they are right now. Um, I know so many people who are struggling, you know, and again, that's all part of the plan. They say the devil's in the details, and they're not wrong, you know. That's about it. It's funny. I tried to read the book of Revelation in 1985. Couldn't make head nor tail out of it. You know, we were still dealing with with old technology back then. It was still very much a cash society, and we were still dealing with old technology. And the idea that the entire world could be monitored, that the government could know where you get your money and what you spend it on, and could control your money, and could monitor everything you do, everything you say, um, you know, who you associate with, where you go, what you do. The idea of that being possible made no sense. And the reason for that is the technology wasn't there. The technology that we had in 1985, even though we thought it was great, even though we thought we were real advanced with our cassette tapes and our Walkmans and our FM radio that was just starting to come out at that time in a big way. You know, if you bought a new car, there was a good chance it would have an FM radio in it. You know, we thought, you know, on these home gaming systems and home computers, which nobody could afford, really. But if you could afford one, it was basically just a glorified word processor. That's all they were, really. There was no internet to connect them to or anything. Color television. Oh boy, we got color TV. Look how advanced we are. We got color TV. Yeah, we got it made. And we really figured that back then, you know. And in many ways, we were right. But our technology was primitive. It was very primitive. We didn't know how primitive it was because every generation thinks, if you go back to the 1920s, that generation thought that their technology was pretty advanced. And it was at that time, just like ours was in our time. But it was nothing, just like ours was nothing. But here's the thing. If you read the book of Revelation back then, it made absolutely no sense. None. How could it? I mean, what, they're going to know every place you go. They're going to know who you associate with. They're going to know where you get your money and what you spend it on. How's that possible? That doesn't make any sense. Now we all carry a tracking device with us in our pocket. It's called a cell phone, cellular telephone. We carry that with us. If you're driving a car, your car has a tracking device in it. They all do. Unless you're driving an old car. My old truck doesn't have one, but I mean, it's nearly 30 years old, too. But I mean, if you're driving a modern car or a modern truck, there's a tracking device built right into it. And even if you don't subscribe to the service, even if you've got the service available but you don't subscribe to it, it's still there and the government can still track you with it. You know, OnStar or whatever. I don't know what they call it these days. Maybe they don't call it that anymore, but whatever they call that service they offer now, even if you don't subscribe to it, it's still there. Oh, you can still be tracked. I think that's why the government went on such a big kick to get rid of all the old cars. To get rid of cars that will run wherever the government wants them to or not. You know, the government can't control them remotely. Cars that the government doesn't have the power to track you, to know where you're driving to, and so on. I think that that was a big part of it. Cars that were easy to fix and cheap to run that we had years ago. I think that's why the government went on such a big kick to get rid of all that stuff. It's all part of the plan, you know. Yeah, anyway, now the technology is there. We can be tracked. With digital currency, they're trying to do away with money right now. You know, the last scamdemic there, they tried to frighten everybody. Oh, don't touch money. You'll get sick and you'll die if you put your hand on a $5 bill. It's crawling with cooties. Somebody breathed on that. It's got cooties on it. Deadly cooties. Deadly lung cooties. You don't want to touch that, you'll die. And a lot of people believed it. Yeah, instead of doing that, touch the dirty card reader in the store that everybody's had their fingers on, tapping out the numbers on the keypad. Touch that thing. But don't worry, because they're going to sanitize that with a toxic chemical between customers. They're going to spray that down with some shit that gives you cancer. I remember watching the guy outside the Walmart store with the pressure sprayer hosing down the shopping carts with some chemical. And I was going in there with a friend of mine one day. And I mean, the mist coming off that stuff was hitting us in the face. And it actually kind of took my breath away, this stuff. And I said to my friend who was going into the store with me, I said, that young lad there, because it was just a young teenager that was hosing down these carts with the stuff. I said, that young lad there, he'll end up with cancer, breathing that in all day long. And he agreed with me, my friend did. He said, yeah, most likely you will, And see, this is the thing. This all came out of fear that was generated over what amounted to a bad flu, Now they're pushing the whole monkeypox agenda. Oh, we're all going to die from monkeypox. You better get your vaccinations. Now they're saying anybody who's critical of their narrative, anybody who questions their narrative is spreading false information. And we must be dealt with. We're dangerous. We must be dealt with. How are we going to combat these people, these anti-vaxxers, and all that? I get so sick of being called an anti-vaxxer just because I won't agree to take an experimental chemical and be used as a guinea pig, And it turns out I was right not to take it. And this next round that's coming up of these things, I'm not going to take them either. But, they learn from the first scamdemic. And so they're ready for us this time. All of us who didn't comply, they're going to crack down a lot harder on us this time. You don't comply with the lockdowns. You don't wear the mask or whatever other thing they tell you to wear. I mean, I don't know. They say this monkeypox, at least in the beginning, it was all part of had to do with men who were engaging in promiscuous gay sex. Maybe they're going to require all us men to go around with a condom on. Maybe we're going to have to unzip our pants and haul the penis out there and to prove we got a condom on before we can go into the store. I don't know. I'm not doing it. I'm not wearing a mask over my face. I'm not wearing a condom. I'm not taking the shots. Not doing any of it. Whatever it is they want, I'm not doing it. And but I expect that I'm going to get into serious trouble this time. I figured I might get into serious trouble before, and some people did. I was fortunate that I didn't end up in serious trouble the last time. But I don't think I'm going to escape it this time. I don't think anybody is. Because they're coming for us this time. And, so yeah, there's things to be concerned about. That's why I think we got to try to get right with God. Because we can't defeat these people on our own, These people are working with some pretty scary demonic... They're involved with some pretty scary demonic stuff. We don't have the power on our own. We have the power due to the authority given to us by Jesus Christ over all things. But we don't have the power on our own. You know, you try casting out a demon or ordering a demon out of a place or whatever, but not in the name of Jesus Christ, and see what happens to you. If I were to say, I, Tom Fournier, command you, demon, to leave this place, you know, the demon's going to make mincemeat out of me. Demon's going to chop me up into pieces, scatter me to the wind. They can do that. But not if you are speaking in the name of Christ, they can't. They hear the name of Christ and they tremble. It's physically painful for them to hear the name of Jesus Christ. They can't stand it. That's how much power Jesus has. His name alone carries that much weight. But I mean, on our own, we're nothing. We can't do anything. You know, a demon would laugh at me if I try casting him out or ordering him to leave in my own name. He'd say, and who are you? You know, what? Really? You know, you're kidding. You gotta be kidding. Yeah, now I'm gonna mess you up. You're playing around with me. I don't like that. I'm gonna mess you up. But you say, in the name of Jesus, and that thing can't get away from you fast enough. You see, that's the thing, because the name of Jesus carries weight. These people that are doing all this stuff, they're mixed up with demonic things. They're mixed up with They're mixed up with demons. They're mixed up with things that are unclean. And so, of course, they're spreading diseases. They're spreading lies. You know, they're convincing people that doing all this stuff that's harmful for them is for their health. Yeah, spray all these shopping carts down with a toxic chemical and breathe in the mist. Do that 10 hours a day. You won't get COVID. You'll be okay. You won't get COVID then. No, but you'll friggin' die of cancer. Oh, I mean, you know, some poor 17-year-old guy working part-time at Walmart hosing down the carts with the disinfectant. And when he's 30, he'll develop cancer of the throat or something, or cancer of the larynx or some crazy thing, and he'll die because of that job, because of what he did at Walmart. And, I mean, and people will say, well, he was keeping people safe. He probably believed he was. And even if he didn't, it was a paycheck. So, boss says do it, you do it. But the thing is, no, it was bad. And then all the people that touched those carts and got that stuff on their hands and everything, little kids touching the cart and then putting, kids, they're always putting their fingers in their mouths. God only knows how many people were poisoned by all these disinfectants, how many people were harmed by all this other stuff. I mean, we know that the shots that they've tried to force everybody to get, we know that they've harmed people in a big way. Anyway, it's all evil. That's all. It's just all really evil. And we need to resist it on that basis. And it may mean that we die. It may mean death for some of us. But the thing is, this old body, it's going to die someday anyway. The most you do by staying alive at the expense of your soul is you buy yourself a few more years. And a few more years of what? Living under tyranny? Living under those kinds of people? And so that then you can die, and when you go stand before the Lord, you can say, well, I was scared. Jesus told the story about the 3 servants who, when the master left, the master went away for a while, and he left each of the servants a portion of his wealth. And he said, I want you to take this and I want you to do your best with it. And the first servant, he left a fairly big portion. The second servant, he left less. And the third servant, he left even less. But they all got a portion. The first servant went out when the master was away. He invested the money. He did really well with it. And he made quite a profit for his master. Second servant did the same. The third servant took his money and he buried it under a rock or something, and that was it. Well, when the master came back sometime later, the master was away a very long time. But at some point, the master returned to his house, and he summoned his servants. So they're all standing in line there to account to the master for what they've been up to while he's been away. And he says to the first servant, okay, come on up here, tell me what you've been up to, what have you done? The first servant says, well, you know the money you gave me, master. He says, oh, yes, I know. What did you do with that? Well, sir, I invested your money, and I made a huge profit for you. So here you go. Here's your original money that you gave me. And here is, in addition to that, here's a profit. I've managed to increase your wealth. Well, the master said, that's pretty good, you know. I'm happy with that. You did well. You know, you're a good and faithful servant, so thank you. You did very well. I'm impressed, and I'm going to trust you with even more now. You've proven to me that I can trust you, so I'm going to trust you even more than I did before. Good on you, you know. Second servant, pretty much the same scenario, you know. Gave him his original investment plus what he had earned over and above that. Again, was praised by the master, was told, I trusted you with this, I'm going to trust you with even more. You're a good and faithful servant. The third fellow came, and he had dug up the money he heard the master was back, so he dug up the money from under the rock, and he said, well, I heard that you were a pretty harsh and cruel taskmaster, and I was scared. I was afraid I'd lose all your money that you gave me, so I buried it under a rock. But I've dug it up, and here it is. Here's your investment. And the master was not happy. And the master said, you made an assumption you shouldn't have made, and you did wrong. You did bad. You acted out of fear, and you shouldn't have done that. That was a huge mistake on your part. And, basically pack up your stuff and get out of my house. I don't want to even know you. You coward. You faithless coward, you. And he put him out of the house. Well, you see, that's what Jesus said is going to happen with us when we stand before God. So, fear has no place in our vocabulary. Not when we got God on our side. Fear has no place in our vocabulary. We can't have it. Right now I have some worries. I'm concerned about a lot of the things that are happening in my life personally. I'm going to have faith to get through it. I can't fix this situation on my own. But I know that with God's help, I'll get through it. There's no doubt about that. Fixing it on my own, I can't do. So I'm going to be spending some time in prayer, just asking for God's help with these matters that I find myself now coping with. The bottom line is, on our own we can't. We like to think we can, and maybe we can a little bit for a while, but ultimately we can't. On our own, we tend to fall flat on our faces. But with God, it works out. I may not have the truck anymore. I may have to go back to pushing a wheelbarrow around. I don't want to do that. But if it's God's will, then that's what I'll do. You know, personally, I hate it. But if it's God's will, I'll do it because, you know, it's up to God to decide these things, and God knows best. And I know that ultimately, if I obey God, I'll be blessed. I may not get what I want. You know, like when it comes to answering prayers, people will say, well, God didn't answer my prayer. Well, God does answer prayers. It's just sometimes the answer is no. Funny, I saw an episode of MASH. You got older people like me will remember the show MASH. And they had a guy come into the field hospital, into the MASH hospital one time. And he had a form of shell shock. He had been just devastated by things that he'd seen and things that he had had to do in the war. He was guilt-ridden over some of the stuff that he had had to do. And that wasn't an uncommon thing. There were a lot of guys really badly messed up, because of war. World War II, Korean War, the Vietnam War, World War I. And a lot of men were really badly messed up by that because they were forced to do inhuman things. And those guys, they came about as close to witnessing hell as you ever want to come. They really did. And naturally it affected them. I mean, how couldn't it? There'd be something wrong with them if it didn't affect them. But they got this guy in the field hospital anyway, and he was of the belief, he had a delusion, he believed he was Jesus. He was totally convinced that he was Jesus Christ. And I remember there was a scene where one of the doctors, I think it was one of the doctors in the camp, was talking to him. And this doctor, he said, okay, so tell me this. You say you're Jesus, right? Well, yes, son. He said, I am Jesus. Okay, he said, I have a question for you. Why don't you answer prayers? Because he said, I've prayed to you in the past and you haven't answered me. And this guy who had this Jesus thing going or whatever, that thought he was Jesus, he said, yes, he said, God answers all prayers. And the guy talking to him said, oh, no, he doesn't. I prayed and I didn't get the answer I was looking for at all. He said, but I did pray and I never got the answer I wanted or was looking for or was after. And the guy who thought he was Jesus, he says, well, sometimes the answer is no. He answers all prayers. God answers all prayers, but sometimes the answer is no. Well, the guy may, but he wasn't wrong. Sometimes the answer is no. We don't always get the outcome we want. But if we look back, we can see where we always get the right outcome. So I think this truck situation with me, if I'm not meant to have a truck anymore, I'm not meant to have it, well, then it'll go away. And that's how it'll be. And it will be tough. But it will be the right thing. If I am meant to have it, then God will provide me with a way of keeping it. But again, whatever the right outcome is, God will direct it, and that's what will happen. I just have to have faith that that's how it will be. And if I have the faith that that's how it'll be, then that's how it'll be. And I'll look back on what's happening now. In the future, I'll look back on it and I'll say, well, it worked out the way it was supposed to. That's all. And as this world gets tougher, The world's always been tough. Let's not kid ourselves. It was tough. In 1985, when I tried to read the book of Revelation, I couldn't make any sense out of it. But I was living in a damn tough world back then. It wasn't easy. Life was hard back then. Authority figures were often crooked back then, just like they are now. Just the technology hadn't reached the point where they could fully implement the plan. That's all. And of course, I couldn't make head nor tail out of that book because it relied upon the technology existing. You know, in order for it to make sense, the technology had to exist. Now the technology exists and it makes sense. You can say, okay, that's how they're going to do that. You know, back then it was like, how are they going to do that? Now we can read it and say, that's how they're going to do it. Because we see the technology. Anyway, bottom line is, it's always been tough. When you look what Jesus went through, like, we're going to be persecuted. Those of us who believe in Jesus, we are going to be persecuted. We're being persecuted now. We're going to be more persecuted. When the mark of the beast comes, we're going to be severely persecuted. And the thing is, there's a hatred now of God, and there's a hatred now of Christ, and there's a hatred of those who follow Christ. You know, there's a real rabid hatred out there for anything to do with God. You know, the Bible tells us that nobody can be deceived into taking the mark. So we know that's true. The Bible wouldn't say it if it wasn't. However, there'll be many people will take it, knowing full well that they are disassociating themselves with the God of the Bible, with the God of heaven, and with his Son, Jesus Christ, that they're disassociating themselves by taking it. And they won't care because they already have that attitude of, well, F him anyway. Who's he? You know? They already have that attitude toward God, and they already have that attitude toward you and toward me. If we believe in God, they have that attitude toward us too. And so they're not going to have any difficulty persecuting us. But if you look at the story of the crucifixion. Look how people, very arrogant, self-righteous, prideful people, maliciously, falsely accuse Jesus of terrible things, of terrible crimes. You know, Jesus is the Son of God, and they accuse Jesus of blasphemy. They accuse Jesus of essentially going against himself. As crazy as that is, that's what they did. And even Pontius Pilate, who was a pagan, saw through them. He knew that the accusations against Jesus were wrong. That's why he bent over backwards not to crucify Jesus. Now, ultimately, he gave in because he was a coward and because he couldn't see any other way to avoid another uprising. And there had been an uprising around there not long before that, and he had already been warned by Rome. Caesar had already warned him. Any more trouble in your area, and you're getting recalled. Well, getting recalled to Rome would have meant death. They would have put him to death. He knew that. He was scared. That's the bottom line. He was scared. And so even though he knew better, even though God had blessed him with a certain amount of wisdom, because he knew better, he still condemned Jesus, and then he was racked with guilt over it because he knew better. He knew he condemned an innocent man. I don't know if he knew who Jesus truly is or was, but I know just by reading the story that he at least had the idea that Jesus was an innocent man. And also that Jesus was a great man. You could tell he knew that Jesus was worthy of respect. And he knew that these people who were trying to condemn Jesus weren't. But he feared them because they had the crowd on their side. They had worked the crowd up. And he feared them. So he gave in to them. You see. Jesus said, they hate me. How much more will they hate you? That's what he said. And the thing is, if they did all that to Jesus, why should we think that we won't experience the same or worse? Hard to imagine worse, really, think about it, but it can always be worse, they say, so never assume it won't be. Look at all his apostles, except I think one of them died of old age. The rest were executed in terrible ways, crucified upside down, and all kinds of bad stuff, you know? I mean, we can't expect anything in this world but hardship and derision and hatred to be directed at us. We can't expect anything but that. If you claim to have an association with the God of the Bible, with Yahweh and his son, Yeshua, the man we call Jesus, you got to expect to suffer. And even those who don't suffer, I mean, even those who don't have a connection there, even they suffer. But we will suffer more. You know, and that's just how it is. Jesus suffered. They humiliated Jesus. Those people, you know, they whipped him. Damn near killed him, whipping him. They put a crown of thorns on his head and a robe around him or whatever, like a purple robe like a king. And then they beat him. You know, they cuffed him around. They blindfolded him and they cuff him across the head and say, "Okay, tell us who hit you." You know, this is what they were like. You know, this is what they did to him. They spat on him. The people jeered him. They spat on him. They hit him. Forced him to carry his own cross up to Golgotha, to the hill where they crucified him. Stripped the man naked in front of the crowd. Imagine being stripped naked right in front of everybody, right out in the open there. Then they nailed him to the cross, and then to add insult to injury, they gambled over his undergarment because he had a beautiful one-piece woven undergarment, and they coveted it, and they said, "Well, rather than tear it up, we'll cast lots for it." So they gambled, literally gambled for Jesus's underwear. Right at the foot of the cross, as he's up there nailed to the cross looking down at them, they're gambling. They're casting dice, casting lots, casting dice, gambling over his clothing, over his underwear. I mean, does it get more humiliating? Does it get more degrading? This is the King of the universe, Savior of all mankind, and that's how they treated him. Why should we expect better? You know? Anyway, there's some times coming. I'll tell you, we're suffering now. We're going to suffer more. That's just how it is. Get ready. Fortify yourselves with prayer because I know that's what I'm going to have to do. I don't intend to comply. I'm suffering some hardships now, and I'm going to suffer far more before this is over, and I know that. But God's going to be with me through it. I know that. We have a great friend there, and he is meet us up there. Physical body we'll leave behind. We'll ascend. We'll be with God. And far better to suffer temporarily here and be with God forever than to have a good time here and suffer forever being separated from God. You know, people wonder what hell is. Hell is a place where God has withdrawn himself. You see, all good things come from God. All the things that are enjoyable in life, all the things that are good come from God. When God withdraws his spirit, nothing good can be any place where there is no God. God ain't there, there's nothing good there. And what happens is the bad multiplies and takes over, because nature abhors a vacuum. So if God withdraws his spirit, and therefore withdraws all the good, the space that was taken up with God's spirit and with all that good, which is a huge space, it gets overtook with bad. That's what happens. And that's hell. You know, that's hell. God has withdrawn himself from that place. And therefore no good can be there, only bad. And the bad is multiplied so many times. See, people who don't believe in God, or people who are mad at God, will say, well, if God's so great, why does he allow this, that, and the other thing to happen? They never question all the stuff that doesn't happen, because God doesn't allow it. You know, we're living in a fallen world. We're not in heaven yet. We got to expect there's going to be negativity here. You know, we got to expect that. Not everything is going to be good in this world. Not at this stage anyway, because it's still a fallen world. However, it's not always going to be, but for now it is. And so, yeah, God doesn't prevent all bad things from happening here. But he does hold a lot of stuff back. But see, we're so dumb we don't think of that. We just think about the stuff that he allows. We don't think about all the stuff he doesn't allow, and how much worse things would be if God withdrew himself from this place completely. God holds a lot of stuff back. We just don't know about it because he's holding it back. Anyway, like I say, the time is coming anyway when God will withdraw from this place. That's also talked about. We're told that in Scripture. And that period of time is the period of time known as the tribulation. And there will be hell on earth. And again, we haven't seen that yet. Even like I mentioned, war being the closest thing to hell on earth. And I stand behind what I said, because I said the closest thing. I didn't say literally hell on earth. But that's what's coming. Hell is going to come to earth for the period of the tribulation, because God is going to withdraw. God's going to let him have at it. You want it? Here it is. Fill your boots. Enjoy. I'm going over here now. You do your thing. That's what he's going to do. He's not going to stay away forever, but he's going to stay away long enough to make you think. I'll tell you, to make you see how important his influence really is. To make you see what all he holds back, because he's not going to be holding it back anymore, and it's going to come. You see, all these people who say, well, if God is real, why doesn't he hold this, that, and the other thing back? Well, they're going to see what he does hold back, because that's all going to come, because he's not going to hold it back anymore. You know, be like somebody saying a little poodle, yappy little poodle comes and bites you on your ankle, and you say, well, if there was a God, he'd have held that poodle back. But the thing is, you're not seeing the half a dozen pit bulls he is holding back. You know, you're not seeing that. And that's the thing. I mean, so you blame God for not holding the poodle back because you got nipped on your ankle, which is unpleasant. I'll acknowledge that. Yes, that's unpleasant. But the thing is, he's busy holding back, a half a dozen pit bulls. And they're not having their way with you right now because God held them back. He let the poodle bite you, but he's not letting the pit bulls at you. But he's going to. He's going to let them go. He's going to say, well, here you go. You wanted to know what I do. You wanted to see what I do for a living. I'll show you, and he'll let them go. And then you'll really know what it's like to live without God's protection. If you're one of those people who hates God because you don't think he holds anything back, you think he allows all the evil to happen. There are so many things that could be happening right now and aren't, and we're very fortunate for that. And that is down to God. All good comes from God. If there's no God, there's no good. That's why hell is so bad, because there's no good there. There's no God there, there's no good there. It's funny, I heard a story one time. Back in the early 70s, there was a lot of trouble with the United States government at the time. Kind of made war with the Native Americans. They tried to take a lot of land off them, and they succeeded too. And there were several battles kind of fought between the Indians and the natives and the American government, the U.S. government. And there was one story I heard one time, and it was a bad situation. It was the United States government was trying to kick a bunch of natives off a reservation. This reservation was prime real estate, and they wanted it. And they were trying to kick the natives off it. And they were offering to resettle them, wanted to move them into the desert. Well, this one old Indian chief that was in on the negotiations, he had a good answer for them. Because this one senator, this was back in like 1974, 73, 74. This one senator, he said, there's nothing wrong with that place where we want to resettle you. He said, all that place needs is a little water and a few good people. And without missing a beat, the old Indian chief said, he said, yeah. He said, both of those things are what hell needs too. He said, that's exactly what hell needs, a little water and a few good people, Now, the one thing he missed was God. Hell needs God. Hell is hell because there's no God there. But still, that was a good answer. I never forgot that. I heard that story many years ago, and I always thought that was a wise old man, that old Indian chief that said that. That was the perfect answer. All that place needs, the senator said, is a little water and a few good people. And the Indian chief spoke up and said, yeah, and that's all that hell needs too. Little water and a few good people. Anyway, God withdraws from a place. It ain't nice, I'll tell you that, because he does hold back an awful lot. Like I say, and he does such a good job holding it back that we tend not to be aware. And that's why we blame him for the things that happen, for the things he doesn't hold back. Anyway, that's it. It's time for me to go to sleep. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you all have a good night or whatever time it is wherever you are. It's now 10:15. It's past my bedtime. I'm going to be really bitchy tomorrow if I don't get my sleep. So there you go. I'm going to get my sleep. We'll talk later. Good night.